Project cards. A pretty overlooked mechanic in Star Wars Rebellion. As most of you watching know, there are quite a few of them, some better than others. In today's video, I want to rank all 7 types of project cards based on how good I think they are. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. With all that said and done, let's give a brief overview of what project cards are in Star Wars Rebellion. Project cards are an Imperial-only deck that stays separate from the mission deck and represent big, game-changing Empire projects. Rebels can't tell what they are until they're revealed, but the Imperial player can spot them by the project icon. You mainly get projects through research and development and a few other missions like secret weapons research. R&D lets you remove sabotage markers and draw a project, or draw 2 and keep 1. It's a reliable way to find key projects throughout the game. To play a project card, you will need logistics. With all that said, let's start by ranking our first card, Oversee Project. Oversee Project is usually the last card I want to see when I resolve research and development. It lets you choose a single Imperial unit in space QQ 1 or 2 and immediately deploy it in the system where the project is played. There are also 2 of these cards in the project deck. While this ability sounds useful, in practice it's very restrictive. You need the right unit already queued and in the right slot, and with now a leader placed in the system, it stops units from moving out of it that turn. Compared to other project cards that directly place unique units on the build queue, this card often feels like a last-minute bump rather than a real payoff. It can occasionally matter if you're in the last few turns of the game and need a powerful unit on the board right now, but most of the time it's outclassed by missions like SWR efforts or address delays. It's easy to play around and simply not worth prioritizing when stronger project cards exist. One gimmicky benefit is speeding up Death Star construction, but since the second Death Star rarely is a decisive game changer and serves as more of a rebel target, this card lands firmly in D tier. Speaking of which, next up, Construct Death Star. Construct Death Star is a project that from a new player's perspective looks like a huge payoff for the Empire down the line, but in practice leaves a lot to be desired. The project card is resolved in a remote system and places 1 Death Star under construction in the system, and 1 Death Star on space 3 of the build queue. There's only 1 of this card in the project deck. This card kind of sucks. The Death Star under construction is an immobile, fragile target that rebels can often destroy or neutralize before the Death Star even comes online. The Death Star plan's objective card, which gives 2 reputation, and the fact that the Imperial player will already have a Death Star no matter what type of setup you're playing with, makes this card more of a forced commitment, which reduces the flexibility of the Imperial player and can tie up resources for several turns, rather than a long-term investment. This card can pair well with Secure the Plans, Interdictors, or Shield Bunkers to defend it, but ultimately sucks resources that could be better used to locate the Rebel base. Because it is flashy, takes up space in the project deck, and is situational, and gives the Rebels an additional target, Construct Death Star gets a C tier. Before we move on, I'll put on screen a custom Death Star under construction card that I think gives the Death Star a much needed buff. Now moving on to Construct Factory. This card, unlike the previous 2, gives an immediate bonus upon being played and provides a long-term investment. This card is resolved in any Imperial system and places units on the build queue using the system's resource icons, removing a sabotage marker if one is present. This is a very strong Imperial card. The standard way to remove sabotage is to play R&D, but R&D can only be played in a system with Imperial loyalty. This project bypasses this and places units on the build queue, making it a very solid project card during any game. This project is often regarded as one of the most efficient projects, as you gain production and fix a big problem with 1 action. I have had countless games where this card has saved me by removing a sabotage marker late into the game and throwing off the rebel player. And the fact that there are 2 of these cards in the deck only makes this card better. Therefore, this card gets a well-deserved A tier. Now moving on to 2 very similar cards, Super Laser Online and Single Reactor Ignition. Starting with Super Laser Online, this is generally the stronger of the 2, and the one most players think of when they picture the Death Star actually doing something. Super Laser Online is the only way in Star Wars Rebellion to completely destroy a system, wiping out all Rebel ground units and instantly winning the game if the Rebel base is in that system, while leaving Imperial units untouched. Don't ask me how. On top of that, after the system is destroyed, the Imperial player gains 1 loyalty in any populous system in that region, which can quietly swing control of the game in your favor. This card is absolutely essential in any Death Star focused strategy, and failing to find it can straight up lose you the game if you've committed heavily to the super weapon. That said, it's not impossible to access. There are 3 copies of Super Laser Online in the project deck, more than any other project card, making it relatively reliable to find over the course of the game. Because it's powerful, but still requires a significant setup and commitment, I'd play Super Laser Online solidly in B tier. Single reactor ignition, on the other hand, feels like a worse Super Laser Online. It is added in the Rise of the Empire expansion and destroys all Rebel ground units and target markers in the system. No loyalty, no destroyed system. The only bonus to this card I see is avoiding the Rebel objective card Inspire Sympathy, which gives 1 reputation per destroyed system. But it is not guaranteed that the Rebels will have this card. That said, although Single Reactor Ignition is a worse Super Laser Online, there is only one of these cards in the deck, and this card has some use cases compared to Overseas Project's limitations. Therefore, Single Reactor Ignition is going to go into C tier. Moving on to my favorite project card in the game, Interdictor Development. This card is resolved in a blue square Imperial system and places 1 Interdictor on space 2 of the build queue. However, if you assign 2 leaders to this mission, the Interdictor is placed on space 1 instead, and the project card returns to your hand, which just by reading this card is a clear upside. Before getting into strategy, let's look at the Interdictor itself. It has 4 red health, rolls 2 green dice, and can transport 4 units. Getting a unit with the Star Destroyer level health straight onto space 1 of the build queue is a huge win for the Empire. The 2 green dice might look underwhelming at first, but the real value of the green dice isn't just the damage, it's increasing your total dice cap. Outside of the Interdictor, the only Imperial unit that rolls green dice is the TIE Striker, and you'll rarely get 3 in a battle anyways. That means that without Interdictors, the Empire almost never caps out on green dice in combat, unlike the Rebels who can produce Nebulon Bs in blue circle systems. While the transport capacity is low, matching an assault carrier, that's rarely a major concern for Interdictors, as it will regularly be accompanied by at least 1 other capital ship. Next, let's talk about the game-changing tactic card that comes with the Interdictor. The Interdictor Space Tactic card cancels a Rebel Tactic card, and then lets the Imperial player play 1 additional Tactic card. That alone can completely swing a space battle, but where this really shines is in Death Star defense. One of the most common Rebel lines is bringing up a Nebulon B with a few fighters, using the Nebulon Tactic card to keep at least 1 ship alive, and then playing Death Star plans to roll for a potential instant kill. The Interdictor is one of the very few mobile ways the Empire has to shut that down. By outright canceling the Rebel Tactic card, it removes that entire line of play and forces the Rebels to fight the battle with brute force. No other Imperial Tactic card does this, and this makes the Interdictor uniquely valuable both in fleet combat and as protection for the Death Star. Finally, the last major bonus is that while the Interdictor is alive, Rebel units in that system cannot retreat. Outside of Admiral Piet's card, this is the only way the Empire can prevent Rebel retreat in space combat. But unlike Piet's card, which is a one-time effect, the Interdictor's ability is permanent for the entire game, as long as that ship remains on the board and in that system. This turns every fight in that system into a commitment that the Rebels can't easily escape, forcing them to focus their fire on the Interdictor or lose flexibility. And the Interdictor is mobile, so it could go to any system that the Empire can defend it with. This lets the Empire punish hit-and-run Rebel tactics and secure kills that would normally slip away, and fully capitalize on winning battles rather than just forcing retreats. Putting all of this together, Interdictor Development checks every box you could want from an Imperial project. It accelerates the build queue, gives you one of the most impactful space units in the game, provides unique combat control through its tactic card, hard counters common Rebel Death Star lines, is replayable, and permanently shuts down retreat wherever it's present. On top of that, the project card itself can be played in either a loyal or a subjugated system, which gives it far more flexibility and makes it easier to resolve consistently throughout the game. The fact that there are 2 copies of Interdictor Development in the project deck also means that Imperial players have a realistic chance of finding it in most of their games. I'll fully admit that I'm a little biased here. I love the Interdictor, and I actively build around it whenever I can. Especially if I get proceeding as planned, I'll almost always assign 2 leaders on an Interdictor. But even accounting for that, the value this card provides is undeniable. For impact, for flexibility, and for sheer control of the board, Interdictor Development earns a clear S-tier placement. Now, moving on to the last project card, Construct Super Star Destroyer. Not the most original name, but this card definitely makes up for it in raw power. Similar to interdiction development, it's resolved in a blue square Imperial system and places one Superstar Destroyer on space 3 of the build queue. Just looking at the SSD stats, it's obvious why so many players consider it one of the best project cards in the game. The SSD has 6 red health, the most of any ship in the game, rolls 2 black dice and 3 red dice, and on top of that, it has 8 transport capacity. That combination matters because unlike the Death Star, which can become a liability mid-game due to Rebel objectives, the SSD doesn't have a gimmick. It's just a reliable combat chip that wins fights and forces the Rebels to react. Next, let's talk about what the SSD actually does for you strategically. The biggest strength I see is that it consolidates power into one piece. You don't need a perfect fleet spread across 3 systems to threaten the Rebels, because once the SSD is online, it becomes a mobile anchor that can punch through most Rebel defenses, carry a real invasion package, and still have enough durability to stay on the board even when the Rebels commit hard. It also changes how the Rebels have to build. If they want to fight it head on, they need a serious stack, lots of Moncals. And if they ignore it, you can use it to lock down key systems, chase away Rebel units, and apply constant pressure while you continue hunting the Rebel base. The SSD's tactic card is not nearly as good as the Interdictor's, but it's still strong because it supports what the ship already wants to do, which is win space battles and stay alive. And realistically, that's all you need. A project that also has 2 copies in the project deck produces a unit with the best raw stats in the game, and the capacity to move your ground units across the board is always going to be a top tier card. For that reason, Construct Superstar Destroyer is an easy S tier for me, and if I see it off research and development, I'm almost always taking it unless I have a very specific reason not to, like an Interdictor. And that's all I have for today's video. Thanks for watching, and if you disagree with one of these placements, drop it in the comments, because I guarantee that someone's going to argue about some of my takes, especially the Interdictor stuff. Join the Discord if you haven't already, and if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. And if you want more Rebellion content like strategy breakdowns or more tier lists, let me know what you want to see next. Again, thanks for watching.